Should you pay to play? So I was recently invited to be a guest on a podcast, which shall remain nameless. And when I expressed interest in participating, I was sent a calendar scheduling link and a credit card form to fill out to pay $200 for my participation. So this really reiterated the question to me, should you pay to play?
Welcome to the Marketing with Marta podcast, where small business owners learn how to simplify digital marketing and start showing up consistently.
If you're not familiar with that term, pay to play is practice where a business or an individual or organization would pay for media exposure. This is sometimes also called an advertorial or sponsored content. Unlike traditional advertising, which is always paid for, it's meant to come across as organic. And this sometimes differs regionally. In my experience, it's very common in Asia. When I was working in communications in Europe, it was common that press trips were sponsored versus in the United States where there were publications that would have a cap on how much their writers could accept. And most often it was like $20 or less from a third party. And that was to prevent any potential biases. So if you want to think about it this way, here's where I look at the pros and cons of all that. So the pros is your guaranteed exposure. You get a visibility. Companies can often reach their target audience without relying on the unpredictability of traditional media attention. It definitely gives you control over the messaging and more control over your narrative. If it's advertorial, they're often written by the company's in-house PR or marketing team to make sure that key messages are highlighted, and it reduces the risk of misinterpretation or biased reporting. When you're on a podcast or a video, you probably have more control over, say, in the editing. Sometimes it can give you an access to a more niche market that's maybe not your organic market, which allows organizations to, if you are looking to target a specific demographic or industry. And then the cons. There's an ethical concern as to the integrity of the journalism. It starts to blur the line between advertising and news or editorial, and that can potentially affect trust. I think we're also really oversaturated, and authenticity to me matters more than anything now. I would rather make a million mistakes talking to you on this podcast or writing my blog post off the cuff or something like that than risk having a perfectly crafted narrative or image or soundbite. Another con is quality control. Not all opportunities are created equal. Some media outlets lack credibility or have lower editorial standards, and that diminishes the value of the coverage obtained. It also means costs. Securing press coverage or podcast appearances could be expensive, especially for smaller businesses or individuals with limited budgets. And to me, the costs almost always outweigh the benefits. You also have limited objectivity. The cornerstone of journalism is responsible reporting, and paid-to-play arrangements compromise this. And journalists may feel pressured to deliver favorable coverage to paying clients over organic ones. And that kind of messes with the whole ecosystem. I think this has gotten better, but I think there is often a lack of transparency when it is pay-to-play content. An advertorial disclaimer is often very hidden, which can lead to confusion or mistrust. Maybe you read the whole article and you thought it was incredible, and then you spy the advertorial thing at the end or hear the disclaimer at the end of the podcast and you're like, well, what the what? To sum it up, if you feel that pay to play is right for your business, go for it. As small business owners, you need to do what you feel is the right move for your company and your clients and the growth of your business. In this case of the podcast that I mentioned at the beginning, I chose not to proceed. It was not clear to the audience that the interview was a pay to play situation, and I didn't feel right about that. But I've been hearing lately more and more that this is becoming pretty common practice for podcasts, which is interesting. So what are your thoughts on pay to play?
Thanks for listening to Marketing with Marta. If you like this episode, be sure to rate, review, and give us a follow. It helps more small business owners learn how to show up consistently and grow their digital presence. And make sure you don't miss out on any of our other tips and how-tos by subscribing to our newsletter at marketingwithmarta.com.